Hi, my name is Rob Scott from UC Today and welcome to UC Summit 2022. So today I'm joined by Dominic Black, who's a Director of Research Services at Cavell, and he's going to be sharing his perspective on the growing interest in communications APIs and the range of options available from vendors today. Welcome, Dom.
Thank you very much, Rob. It's great to be here, and welcome to 2022. It's always fun to start a new year with a new topic and looking at something really interesting and how the industry is changing.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for joining me, Dom. And I know we're going to talk about communications APIs and that kind of thing. But just before we get started, how about just to give us a quick intro? Tell us who you are and what you do at Cavell, please.
Sure. So Dominic Black, I'm Director of Research at Cavell. I've been focusing on the UCaaS market for around 9 years now as a research analyst, helping service providers, vendors, large channels, enterprises really understand how the market's changing and what they can do to adopt new technologies and really where the industry is going, what they should be doing on the back of that. So it's been a fascinating 9 years. When I started, we were really looking at kind of that transition from on-premise to cloud. And when you're comparing what technologies we were using back then to what we're using now, the difference is vast. Been fascinating to see how it's all been changing.
It has indeed, hasn't it? I mean, the last couple of years especially has just been, an amazing journey for the industry, and where we are with UC and collaboration applications nowadays. We're just certainly far beyond where I thought we'd be in 2022. So. Just in terms of kickstarting today's conversation, I mean, we are talking about APIs and kind of taking UC to the next level. I mean, first of all, why is integrating kind of UC platforms with business critical applications and workflows more popular than ever? I mean, it certainly feels like it is. What would you say?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think if I'm looking from an industry perspective, integrating your phone service into other applications is not a new thing. But certainly over the last few years, we've seen a massive increase in demand for those kind of services, and really how you can enable different technologies and different communications technologies to be in different applications, to be in different workflows. And I think from business perspective, they're really trying to understand how they can better enable communications for end customers. Where you used to have kind of a standalone phone system, your PBX, or even a cloud PBX, now we're starting to see more and more of those be integrated into different workflows, different applications. I think as we're seeing more businesses move their applications to the cloud, they're starting to realize, well, actually, these two could work quite well together. One of the first ones that we would have seen kind of UC integrating together has been Unified Communications and Contact Center. There's obviously clear benefits to having your internal communications and tied together with your external communications. And over the last 2 years, 3 years, I'd say, we've seen a massive increase in focus from the industry on building those kind of technologies together and enabling those as well. I think off the back of that as well, CRM sits there and is really quite clear as one of those key opportunities where integration with CRM, integrating with UC with CRM has got clear benefits both to the business and to end users as well.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Dom, and thanks for that. So, I mean, 2022, as you mentioned, what vendor options are on the table for enterprises, looking to take their UC to the next level?
I think you can look at this in a few different ways. If you're going from kind of the but the UCaaS point of view of going into CPaaS there, you've got the companies like RingCentral, 8x8, Cisco, who have all started bringing CPaaS-like services into their portfolio. 8x8 with the acquisition of WaveNet, Cisco with their IMI Mobile acquisition as well, and RingCentral exposing APIs to their end customers, enabling them to embed different communications into their different communications channels into their workflows, into different applications, has seen really customers using those solutions, being able to really differentiate what they're doing and take what is kind of quite a basic product on a UC side and really integrate it into something which is going to add a lot of value to those end users. From the other side of that as well, in looking at what other parties could come into that, you've also got kind of the core CPaaS vendors as well. So likes of Twilio, who would obviously be market leader in this, but other interesting businesses like Cinch, MessageBird, Candy as well. Saw what Vonage did with Nexmo. Ericsson, Vonage with Nexmo, potentially, if that deal goes ahead. Looking into that CPaaS space where they've really started off from a position of enabling businesses to come directly to them and either work and consume communications APIs or consume kind of modules or wrappers where you're bringing together a few different communications APIs into wrappers so that they're easier to consume from an enterprise standpoint. From the other side of kind of CPaaS and APIs, you've got the wholesale providers as well, companies like Bandwidth, who are now moving into the API space and enabling those end users and businesses to start building on top of those wholesale networks as well. So it's quite interesting looking across all of this that a lot of people are now trying to position themselves more into the CPaaS space, more into the API space. And that ownership of the network, especially from the wholesale provider, allows them to be really price competitive in the market and differentiate from some of the major providers like Twilio.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? Because, when we cover the CPaaS market, the communications platform as a service market, it's very, very difficult just to say that's a CPaaS vendor. Sometimes it's because the UC vendors have got API platforms now, as you say, and the carriers have got APIs and that kind of thing. So there's all these different types to consider. But ultimately, the journey for an enterprise starts with a use case. It's got to you've got to have a reason to do this, haven't you? So I'm interested to hear from you, kind of what solutions you see kind of being adopted the most, right now, and maybe how that might play out in 2022.
I think one of the trends I'm seeing and has been seeing for a while, and kind of mentioned it slightly there, which was when people started first consuming communications APIs, it was very much looking for kind of point solutions, and you can look at two-factor authentication and things like that, or inbound call, what's the word I'm looking for? Masking the call when it's coming in so that people can make calls through applications and you're not doing that. And we see that with Uber and companies like that where they're using those kind of solutions. Now I think we're starting to see, the challenge with that was for a business to consume them, they've got to have quite a lot of kind of developers within their organization who are going to go in and really understand what to take there. Now that you're starting to see that move beyond that and beyond just the kind of simple APIs taking into those wrappers, which are kind of more services that you can consume. And I think that's enabling more businesses to take those services rather than those kind of very tech savvy businesses to go out and, well, we need to add voice into this application. Easy to do if you're a developer, but not really if you're anything else, if you've not got those development capabilities. Now we're starting to see those businesses go, well, actually, we can consume a wrapper, which might be something along the lines of looking at sort of the authentication, looking at omni-channel, looking at notification services, emergency services coming through on those kind of wrappers and modules, which enables those businesses to take them and see real use cases coming out. I think the challenge for a lot of businesses has been, what can we do with communications APIs? How do we consume them? It's almost that we've got the opportunity to do whatever we want here. What do we actually want to do with them? Whereas now we're moving into the wrappers and starting to build services on top of those, that it becomes a lot more obvious. Okay, well, that's where the use case is. That's how we're going to enable that. But I think where we've seen use cases is really, where do you want to add communications into your workflow? Or where do you want to add communications into your application? And I think that's where there's so many different use cases out there. It's almost a challenge of, what do you want to use in the long run?
Yeah, indeed. And I suppose there's a case for context as well, isn't there? In terms of, if you get these clouds connected, these applications, working together, then, those data, sets can be potentially shared in those environments as well, which is, opens up all sorts of opportunity as well, I imagine.
I think looking at those different opportunities as well, having everything integrated together, when we're speaking to enterprises now and saying, what are your key considerations for the next 12, 24, 36 months? What they're looking to do is, one, move everything to the cloud, but then also make those different cloud platforms work better together. And the way you're going to do that is with APIs and bringing those APIs together. I think the challenge is going to be who does that integration? Are you going to be working with systems integrators? Are you going to be working with managed service providers who are going to do that for you? Or are you going to have those skills in-house to be able to do them yourselves? And I think the challenge is going to be, what does your IT team do now? Now that they're not having to manage multiple different on-premise solutions, maybe that's where the IT department's biggest role is in the future, is being that integration partner internally within a business of going, well, we're moving everything to the cloud. Cloud can be managed if you're running a Microsoft house and everything's on Microsoft. The cloud is fairly well managed by Microsoft there. The value you as an IT team should be coming in there and doing as well. How do we integrate these other solutions that are outside the Microsoft ecosystem? How do we integrate them together? How do we build on top of that? How do we add more value into the business outside of that? And I think that's a unique opportunity for IT and the CIO, is how do you drive more value out of the solutions that you've got in there by integrating them together and getting them to work better together? Obviously, adoption is another key one on top of that, and that could be enabled as well and made easier as you're bringing all these different solutions together.
Yeah, you've made some really good points there. In terms of looking forward, I mean, crystal ball moment, but in the industry you're in and what you do for a day job, Dom, I'm hoping you can answer this. But what next for this marketplace, and what next for these platforms and vendors? How's things going to play out 2022 and beyond ultimately?
I think, and I'm going to put my advising the industry here on what they should be doing rather than advising enterprises. I think the challenge for everyone out there is, how do you differentiate your solution? I think if you look at most UC solutions, the features are becoming very similar on the back of that. So we're doing a lot of work around the IT channel now and the communications channel. If you're all selling the same product, how are you going to win that market? The challenge is, well, you start lowering the price. I don't think that's where we're going to see the market going. I think the value is, how do you integrate your solution into different workflows, into different verticals as well? I think we're seeing different providers being very successful of going down specific verticals, understanding exactly what they're using and building those off-the-shelf integrations into them. And that's really easier, but makes it a lot easier when you're speaking to an enterprise or speaking to an end customer of going, well, how are we going to make our solution successful? Why should you choose us over someone else? And if you're integrated and you understand how they work, you go, well, look, it works with the 3 applications you're going to use. You're not going to move. And if we look at some of our enterprise research that came out earlier last year, 40% of large businesses said that they have their solution is too integrated to risk moving suppliers. And I think that's a really interesting stat when you look at it from an industry perspective. Of, it no longer comes down to price. It comes down to functionality and the ability that you have, the value that you're driving to your end customer through those integrations and exposing those APIs to enable them to do something really interesting with your product. I think the closed ecosystem, single product, will go away in the future. It will be consumed by smaller businesses who want something off the shelf, but more and more, we're seeing every business want some really interesting differentiation, because every business is different. A 250-person business in insurance is going to be fairly similar to another 250-person business in insurance, but you're going to start going, well, actually, we use HubSpot instead of Salesforce. We use QuickBooks instead of Xero. Everyone's using different software, and it's bringing those applications together and making sure they all work together. I think it's going to be where you can add value in the future.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I suppose from the enterprise side is, organizations are genuinely loyal to their providers in the UC space, for a number of years. So I suppose there's an expectation that all these options are available from these vendors going forward. And, we're seeing more and more marketplaces being built out now, aren't we? Like the Zoom's got a marketplace, Microsoft Teams has got a marketplace where almost UC becomes the work hub as opposed to just a telephony platform. And, organizations are able to kind of log in and develop ideas just by browsing through the kind of library of applications that's in there. And low code and no code is an interesting one, isn't it, as well? Because as you said, everyone's different and they want it in a different way. Some organizations have got in-house expertise versus, some organizations haven't got a clue, in terms of, getting this stuff up and running. So having something for everyone is quite important going forward. Would you agree?
I'd agree. And I think the no code, low code stuff coming through now, and we're seeing a lot of investment coming through on that from all areas, not just the CPaaS vendors, but even the UCaaS providers going, well, how do we enable someone to consume this in an easier way. I think that's going to open this opportunity up to everyone else in the marketplace. It's been interesting even looking at kind of if we look at the contact center space, where you're starting to see, well, previously having to build workflows and things like that was a time consuming, someone had to know what they're doing there. But now we're starting to see drag and drop solutions. If a call needs to go this way, we drag and drop that in there, and we can build it out and build the whole frame ourselves. And you think from a business perspective, being able to have that flexibility to be able to change at that speed is invaluable to them, rather than having to call up their supplier and say, well, we need to make these adds and changes. Can you help us? Well, yeah, it's a 3-week wait list for you to get those through because these customers are more important. But you can sit there and build it yourself now and go, well, actually, that works. We can do this ourselves. And I think that's building in that no code, low code is going to reduce, not entirely, but reduce kind of a big headache on needing to have internal developers, which I think is going to enable these kind of technologies to be consumed by a lot more people out in the world.
Yeah, some fantastic advice there. Thanks, Dom. I'm afraid that's all we've got time for today. But Dom, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your insights.
Thanks, Rob. It's a pleasure to be here. And hopefully we can do this again in the future.
And thanks to everyone for watching. If you've enjoyed today's update, there's lots more to explore at UC Summit this year. And don't forget to follow the big UC Update hashtag on social. I'm Rob Scott from UC Today. Thanks for watching.